Welcome you to EKU Social Work Day 2019. And my name is Dr. Ann Callahan, and as you know, we have a panel of experts here with us today who will be talking to you a little bit about what it means to be a social worker in transition, moving from school into the workplace, perhaps moving from school into getting a master's degree. So it's a big time, and hopefully our experts here will have some insights on that and other things as well. And welcome to our virtual audience who will hopefully be able to chime in as well. You can text in your questions, and we will be monitoring those questions and making sure that you're a part of this experience. So on my right here, we have Lindsay Anderson. Next to her, we have Terry Smallwood. We have Jana Estep. We have Andy Holt. And then we have Crystal McPherson, thank you. So the first question we have, these are questions, by the way, that our students had voted on, identifying the most important question, the burning questions they have on their minds. So they're enlisted in order of most important to ask today. So that's how we derive these questions in the order in which we're going to be addressing these questions. So the first question is, do you think more opportunities exist for MSWs as opposed to BSWs? And it's just going to be free flow. Folks are just going to jump in and start answering that question.
Well, I'll answer it since nobody else is. BSWs would be more opportunities, I believe, because you've got the influx of all the students that have just graduated with their BSW, and there's all kinds of jobs that you can get that take your BSW as the top, education that you need, but you can also work in different places that don't require a BSW. I would think that there would be more opportunities for that. And I don't know about the MSW because I don't have one currently, so maybe somebody else can answer that.
I found getting my MSW that there is ample opportunity for an MSW student to get a higher paying position with the hospital, school system, counseling services. It's depending on what area you're wanting to go into. That's going to be dependent on what type of degree that you go for. Either you stop at your BSW or you get your MSW.
I agree with that. I work for a statewide nonprofit, so if anybody is interested in macro social work practice, I would highly suggest an MSW. I know that we have quit taking BSW students as interns unless they are EKU or Asbury students. We've just found that you all have the knowledge base that a lot of others don't. So I think that it's, if you're looking for macro social work, I would highly recommend MSW.
Thank you. So I'm going to sit in the audience with my friends here and ask you some more questions. So the second question, what is one thing this social work program did not teach you that we should know?
Okay. I think one of the things, I know we've talked about this before, but that kind of really hit me when I first started is that not everybody wants to work with you. Like just because you're a social worker and you have this degree and you think you're going to go out and help people, which I'm sure you all are going to do, not everybody comes your way voluntarily. And they may not, offer up information that you feel like you need or that can help them the best. And so there's a lot of relationship building that has to happen.
I mean, with me working for the Cabinet, which is Cabinet for Health and Family Services, I was not a PCWCP student, so I missed a lot of opportunity doing that and getting thrown into the Cabinet, which, you have a lot of politics, a lot of procedures and things like that that I missed out on not doing that path. However, I did intern at the Cabinet, and I did learn some avenues like that, but as far as the fine-tuned things of reports, dealing with the court system, dealing with certain investigations of child abuse, neglect, those are some areas that I really need to get buffed up on, and I had to take advantage of my internship in order to do that. Not saying EKU doesn't have a great program. They definitely do. Like their general practices that I learned from them, I still pull from today.
That's what I was going to say. I think my knowledge base, although I have an MSW, is I'm still leaning back on my BSW from EKU because I learned so much when I was at EKU. And I still use some of my textbooks. There's a lot of things that I feel like I carry from my experiences here.
Okay, so number 3, what steps did you take to become a licensed clinical social worker? It may not apply to everyone at the table.
I'm still taking my steps, actually.
I'm still taking my steps too.
They are.
Well, if you're thinking about going into the MSW and getting your license after you complete that, certain colleges offer prep courses, workshops. UK offers the comp exam, which is also entails with the class. I really highly take advantage of those opportunities because those will really help you prep for the exam. And then they'll tell you how to apply for the exam, every aspect of it. So take advantage of those first and foremost. I didn't, so now I'm relearning different aspects.
Especially since it's very highly mental health focused. And if your practice is in general social work or in a different field and you don't feel like you've had enough experience in that area, you definitely want to be able to get prepared.
Yeah.
Any other tips?
Didn't go down that route.
Haven't gone down.
Relax, breathe, enjoy,
Trust the process.
trust the process, yes. All those feel good words.
Okay, so question number 4. If you have your MSW, do you think that it has been beneficial, and how?
I'll say I feel like it has been beneficial. I did not want to go down the clinical route, but I was very interested in macro practice. And so I got my MSW while I was still in like an entry-level position, but I've been able to get a more management type of position after I finished grad school. So it definitely helped prepare me for that.
Same for me. When I was getting my master's, I was working for the cabinet, so I was able to apply things I learned while I was attending school to my practice and vice versa, and really help grow my learning process. And after getting my master's degree, I'm in more of a semi-management position. I'm the chief of the training team, which we train foster and adoptive parents. So.
Okay, number 5, do you recommend taking time off between undergraduate and graduate school? Why or why not?
I did. I took a year off and I worked during that time. I think it's a good idea to do that just so you can breathe and not have to worry about school for a minute, kind of let your brain take some time off. That being said, I know it's also difficult to then go back to school once you've had time off. But that's why I only did a year. But also working full-time in a social work position during that time prior to starting grad school, I think was super helpful because then I had knowledge that I could think back to while I was in grad school. So it made more sense. The things that I was learning, I could apply it back to the work that I had experienced.
I did the opposite and went straight from bachelor's to master's while working full-time. And so I think that each person is a little different. I would give a word of caution for anyone that does that, because then you have trained your mind and your body to be at that constant go rate all the time. So then when you're working and out of your master's program and you're constantly going, and then when you have kids, your life adjusts. So I would just caution anybody that if you do that, just make sure that you exercise self-care and have planning for whatever you choose to do, because life happens and things change and you can't stay at that pace that you might have worked yourself up to.
It's definitely a shock when you get out of your master's and you're on that go, and then all of a sudden you just have work, and then work just becomes your entire life, and you're working late and overtime, and you're not practicing self-care, and that's a key aspect in not being burned out in this field.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah Brillick is my assistant, student assistant online. So Sarah, do we have any questions from our virtual audience?
We do not.
Any questions from our audience here?
So how has practice in the social work field been different for you from your BSW to your master's? So in your, at your jobs or in the field at your agencies, how has practice changed? I know you said that you became a manager and it helped you with that. Has it helped anyone else or did anything change?
I mean, in the area that I work in, we work more on a micro, meso, macro level. We're doing all three because we're training classes of foster parents and groups, and so that's sort of the meso area. The micro, we're going out to the homes to approve them one-on-one. And then the macro is definitely going out into the field to recruit more foster and adoptive parents and respite providers. So getting my bachelor's helped prep me for that, but getting my master's really nailed it home for me and organized my thought process on how to deal in each and every one of those arenas. So
I think my experience is probably unique. I am the director of a private nonprofit that some would say I actually built from scratch. I put the social work spin on it, as I say. So as I was building the agency, I had my BSW. But then I would also, while I was working there, work at other jobs, which those experiences were brought to the position that I'm at now. I worked in medical social work. I worked with homeless people. I worked, help me, Gwen. I'm all over the community, right? And I brought all those aspects. It wasn't until I had my bachelor's degree for almost 10 years that I went back for my master's. And so it was what that changed for me was my ability to do the mental health stuff. So that's.
I would like to add that Crystal often would ask me for the new theory book. So when I play students, if there was a new one, I said, here's a new one. I'm still using it, I'm writing like I need it. Those books.
For real,
I used my undergrad books to help me with grad school.
Absolutely.
Like you have your grad
Oh,
school
yeah.
books too, but I still would refer back to all my undergrad
I
books.
did too, for sure.
So let's move on to number 6. How long did it take you to find a job?
I can answer that one. I just hit the pavement right after graduation. I had several letdowns, and then I tried an agency that wasn't social work based, but it worked with individuals that were impacted by disabilities and mental health issues until I found a better fit. And then it was just karma, I guess, knowing somebody. I knew Lindsay, she worked there, and then I met Jennifer, and Jennifer had actually been my daughter's boss at one point. So it was just that connection that I found a job. So it was a few months.
At the movie store.
Yeah, yeah, she was.
So when I did the introductions, I did not know where you all are located, and you alluded to that, so maybe that would, I know you're at Quotes Winners, right?
Yes, and Lindsay has been there in the past.
Yeah. So I did my 490 practicum at Hope Swings, and timing just worked out really well that some people were leaving Hope Swings about the time that I was graduating. So I was able to be an AmeriCorps member for a year at Hope Swings, and then somebody else left, and so then I was able to get her position after my year was over. So I didn't have any lapse in time from the time I graduated to when I started working.
Yeah, my average was about 3 months. But of course, I got my position on the team that I interned at. So when I did my practicum experience, I quit my job because I was fortunate enough to do so I could put all my time and my soul into the practicum because I knew that could lead to a position at the cabinet or elsewhere.
My practicum asked me if I would be interested in a job 2 months before we graduated. So it was kind of a fit for them because they got free labor right there before. But I think that highlights the importance of being present at your practicum and making a good impression because it was an automatic job.
Yeah.
And when I go to hire, I remember certain students, and you better bet I'm sending that job announcement to them, crossing my fingers, thinking, come on.
Definitely.
And I'd echo the same thing. For me, I had my job before I graduated, and Like I said, there was the director position was open, so I literally had to just take over the agency and start running it 2 months before I graduated. Yeah.
Wow. You're a strong woman.
It was like one of those sink or swim things.
I mean, I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
So I know some time has passed. Are you still at the same jobs that you're referring to? Could you recap where you're located?
Yes, my agency is called Family Services Association of Boyle County. It's in Danville, Kentucky, and I've been there for 13 years.
I work for the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, particularly the Recruitment and Certification Unit. We cover the Southern Bluegrass, which is 9 different counties, and I do particularly the training, recruitment, and approval of foster adoptive parents and our respite providers, which is babysitters for our children that are in care.
Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky, and I've been there for 13 years, and I've evolved throughout that. So I'm currently over operations, staff that do fundraising, admin, and our prevention arm, so all of our prevention education and training across the state.
Hope's Wings Domestic Violence Program and Shelter. Been there since 2013. I'm an advocate, but an advocate has many hats, so we do all kinds of stuff. Case management, all the way down.
Transportation.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Just, it'd be too numerous to even talk about. But yeah, we advocate for all of our clients, children and women with domestic abuse issues.
I'm at Community Action Council in Lexington, and the department I'm in is our supportive housing, so I work with homeless individuals and families. I've been there for 3 years, and prior to that, I was at Hope's Wings.
I think and you guys can agree or disagree, you wear multiple hats as a social worker.
Most definitely.
While I do recruitment, certification of foster parents, if there's an investigation, I go out on that.
Which is why this education is perfect.
Exactly.
It's so eclectic. People actually think that we know a whole lot.
Yeah. We fool them quite well, but yeah, you wear multiple hats, multiple hats.
Yeah.
So along those lines, some of these questions you have answered already, so I might skip over, but I want to revisit one. This number 7 question, did you feel prepared to practice social work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Going through Eastern Kentucky University really helped me
Yes.
be prepared.
And if you're fortunate enough to work at the place that you did your 490 practicum, even more so because you've already been there for several months.
Exactly.
But even if not, if you're not able to and you have to go somewhere else, you still had all that practice experience and all the professors. EKU prepares you very well.
When you graduate from Eastern with a Bachelor of Social Work, you're already a social worker. So wherever you go, you're going to be a social worker, whether in a practice or not.
Right.
So that's what I feel.
So the 9th question, what are your thoughts on getting your MSW online versus in person?
That's you.
I got my MSW completely online. I was able to do the advanced standing and do it in a year. So I went to Louisville's program and did their online course. So the only time I was ever there was for graduation. But that was really great for me because in all of that time, I was married, I started a new job, and then I also had a child. So there was no way I was going to be able to make it to campus anywhere or anytime. So with that being said, it was still structured. It wasn't just like a free-for-all. There were still days and times that you had to have things turned in. There may have been like group chat meetings where you had to do a presentation or meet with the professor online for something. But I don't feel like I missed out on anything from not being in the classroom just because the way they had it set up, it was so interactive and there was no way you could get through it like just by yourself. The way they had it structured, you had to meet with other students, whether that was in person or like I said, like a group chat online. You had to do group assignments together. So it was really great how they had it set up.
And I went the sort of opposite route. I went to UK because I live in Lexington, and I know my learning style, and I'm more of needing a professor in front of me, directing me, helping me. So I did sort of that hybrid program that they started when I was going to school, where I knew certain classes I would need more direction, so I took those face-to-face versus the online courses that I did. So sort of a hybrid program.
I did mine at UK all in person, and for my learning style, it was very beneficial. And I also found that the camaraderie, I think EKU, I don't know if your experience is like mine, but you all were like a family. One of my family members is sitting back there, and I got that in my master's, but not as much as here.
Right.
And I think there's some of that I transitioned into the workplace, especially as a supervisor and a leader. And I don't know from other experiences if you lose that helps you grow together and be a better social worker. So I just would hate for folks to miss out on that whole.
I did not have that, but that being said, I was still connected with the EKU family,
Yeah.
so it's not like it wasn't there at all. But with being 100% online, you do get a lot of students from different states, maybe different parts of the state. So there wasn't that in-person type of camaraderie. But yeah, I still had it from EKU, so I got it.
Okay, any questions from the virtual space out there? Nope. Okay.
Don't be too quiet, guys.
No,
Tune in.
from you. So any questions in here?
Yep.
So for those of you going for your LCSW, what tools, apps, websites, what do you all utilize to practice for that test, for the exam?
You want to go first?
I actually don't as of right now. I'm using, as I said earlier, with the agency that I run now, I've been able to now hire a caseworker, and I use interns a lot. So that's freed me up to actually work at another job where I'm doing mental health counseling. I'm doing mental health counseling at Center College, actually, and I do that 20 to 25 hours a week. So right now, it's my supervisor is my resource. I use a lot of things that she's as an LCSW offering, and just my practice, actual practice.
I'm not getting my LCSW at this time. I'm getting my CSW, so it's not mental health focus. So I'm not doing that. And that would be awesome to have. So right now I'm using a lot of workbooks and study guides that my fellow co-workers, fellow social workers have turned me on to, have made copies for me and say, here, Andy. I've also have an app on my phone that gives you practice exams. There's a lot of different technology out there that can really, really help you. I think I wrote down some Post Pro and ASWB are two different programs that you could look into and Google and find some good resources.
And I feel like EKU, like, again, I know we sound like we're really just like tooting EKU's horn, but
That's why
I
they
really
invited
feel
us.
prepared.
No,
It was what I said 10 years before I took my CSW exam. Actually, it was about 6 years before I took my LSW exam because I didn't have to. But again, I felt like the content I carry, I've never learned so much and actually retained it in my life as I did from here. So all of those things that came up on the test, either I had been exposed to it through here or through colleagues, or and that was all set up through our relationships. I was just saying to her, I remember having a class. I was like, wait a minute, you look familiar. I remember that she was with PCAC. Because of that camaraderie, that I know it probably feels like a lot, and it is, but it's worth it. It's well worth it. It prepares you for all of those things that are to come, for your MSW. It prepares you for all of the tests that you have to take and all those things. Like, I really felt prepared.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Dr. Bob.
Sorry. Helpful to go to like a weekend workshop for the LCSW exam preparation for that. And I remember the first night they had us take a pre-test, and she warned us, you'll do the worst in the practice setting you work in. We're like, yeah, right, sure. And sure enough, we all kind of failed that test.
You're going to second guess everything.
Right, yeah.
We know how it really gets done, and of course the test is what by the book.
Yeah.
But I found that we can be very helpful.
And Dr. Bob brings up a good point. Your colleges that you attend have prep courses that you can take advantage of as well. Since I went to UK, I'm going to see if there's prep courses there. I actually met with the people right outside, and they said that there's some coming up, so I'm going to sign up for.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 11, are you happy with the pay at BSW level? And then it asks at MSW level.
I was not, but I'm happier with the MSW pay than I was BSW pay.
Yeah.
If that makes
It probably also just depends on where you work. At Community Action, where I'm at now, they don't pay you a differential whether you have a bachelor's or a master's degree, so that part wasn't a factor. However, most of the management level positions require a master's degree for whatever that type of position is. So it just opened more opportunities to do that.
Exactly. With the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, it doesn't matter if you have your bachelor's or master's. It doesn't matter if you have your social work degree or criminal justice degree. And I hate to say that because it is a practice that we need social workers in. But once you get your master's, you can move up in the agency, become a manager, get a raise, things like that. But Cabinet, pays you what you can live for. We're all doing this for our passion. This is what we want. At least I'm talking for myself. I'm not doing it so much for the pay.
Me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, question 12, how do you keep from burning out?
I think you need to have people around you that understand your experiences. That is what I actually was just talking about that with Gwenda. Like, you have to be able to talk with people that speak your language, and can help you spot those symptoms. So yeah, definitely. Your family's not necessarily equipped for that, so make sure you have a good social work network.
Yeah.
I think having the balance between that, having the friends, the camaraderie at your work, with your school, is important because they understand what you're going through.
Absolutely.
But also have those friends that don't know what you're doing, so you can just cut loose with them and not talk about your day of work or anything, and you can just leave that to the side and pick that up when you go back to it. It's also a good idea.
I schedule self-care. So there are blocks on my calendar that are nothing but just me, no kids, no work, no phone, and it is just blocked out every month for my own personal self-care, and nobody can get in touch with me. So I schedule it to make it happen.
Yep, I do the same. It's not necessarily like on a routine type of schedule, but just every so often I'll do the same thing. Leave work a few hours early, or take a day off or a few days off. Schedule something with the family outside of Lexington. I mean, just something. But it's really easy to not do that, and so it's got to be at the forefront of your mind. Like, you have to constantly be thinking about it. Otherwise, it's really easy to get sucked in and just overdo it.
I walk my dog. And everything's all right.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of mine too. I come home, there's 2 cats surrounding me, so it's nice to have them laying on my lap.
That's therapy.
That's
You don't have
therapy.
to talk to them about work.
Yeah, no, I don't tell them
Talk to them,
about
but
what
they won't
happened that day. But also knowing your limits within your agency as well. Those limits are going to be pushed every single time, especially if you're starting off with the cabinet. But relying on that support network that we talked about within the workplace, relying on your supervisor and your coworkers and your chiefs to help you and guide you through it, so that way that limit can be expanded, not pushed, but expanded.
This is an extension of that question. How do you know that you're burning out?
You get very ill, you get very overwhelmed. No, I'm sorry. I mean, in all reality, you get very ill. You get run down, actually, and you can catch colds or anything like that. You can feel very exhausted, tired. When you're sitting at your desk at 3 a.m. because you have a class the next morning that you have to teach and you weren't prepared for it because you were out on investigation or something, I mean, you could tell. For sure.
Yeah.
Change in behavior. If all of a sudden you're grumpy, everything is getting on your nerves, you need to stop and check yourself and say, hey, am I?
For sure, yeah.
Need some self-care time. And I would also say that having student interns for about 10 years now, one of the things that I see, especially in my field in child abuse and neglect, is if anybody has any childhood trauma that they haven't addressed and then they go right into the workforce,
Yeah.
that can come back up. So
Yeah.
right now, before you go into the workforce, if you need any kind of mental health treatment, support, things you haven't dealt with on your own, I would highly suggest while you have access to services at the university, you take full advantage. Because I've seen a lot of times where students will come into the field and have secondary trauma, have occurrences come back that were not dealt with, and it wasn't good for their clients or themselves. So that would be one of my top 5 words of advice.
I definitely second that because I was a foster child. I was abused. I was adopted at age 2 though, so I was one of the lucky ones. But things that I didn't even think that would bother me since I was so young, I don't really remember things, but when I went out on the investigation stuff, I started feeling it.
The body.
My body started feeling it, my emotions. I became very agitated, angry at the world. And my parents are such a great support network, and they recognize that. Andy, you're not acting yourself. So I did go back to counseling, even though I was in counseling prior to graduating too. So it's not a bad thing. Counseling is not a bad thing. It's checking in, it's working on yourself, it's caring for yourself. So that way you can care for others.
If anything, it shows your strength.
Right.
Now that you are graduated and in the workforce, do you still enjoy social work?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it.
Can't imagine any other job.
Probably even more so now than before because we have the skills and we have the knowledge to know how systems operate and how you can change them. And so, and what's great about social work is that you build your practice upon information from all other aspects of life and other careers. So I just feel like the more I do this, I don't know, the better it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will use systems theory every
thanks, Dr. Rob.
shift you are on. Every.
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
I can't
it's
tell you
just,
how many times I've been working with a family and I'm like, okay, I need to make
All
a map
this.
of this family.
Yes.
Because I
Yes.
don't understand.
I mean, I teach that to my foster parents, making the eco map and the systems. Yeah.
There's a poverty initiative that's taking place in the county that I'm from, and it's there's the Ruby Payne Bridges Over Poverty is what they're using, and it resonates with us, right? A lot of that is interwoven into our curriculum and just what we do. So I was so shocked when the community at large, which is what we're doing now, is we're educating people using that premise, and then we have myself and Gwen that teaches the people that are in poverty. We teach them how to have conversation with the systems that they need to be having conversations with. It was just so weird to me that other people weren't thinking like that, and then I realized that I've had the training. So yes, yeah, definitely.
Definitely, yes.
So what is the environment like at your place of employment?
So the community action that I work at, we cover multiple counties. And so agency-wide, we have about between 250 and 300 employees. And in Lexington, we have multiple office buildings and neighborhood centers. The building that I'm in is the administrative office. And so our housing team is about the only team in that building that actually does face-to-face client interaction. So it's a little stuffy at times because like the executive director's upstairs, HR's downstairs, fiscal's across the hall. So they don't get a lot of client interaction and they don't see that part of it, but we do. So it's a little bit of a hybrid thing. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's like overly stressful or anything because we do have our space, but then we can also go out and meet with clients in their home or at the shelter or wherever they're staying. But it's not like chaotic or anything.
Lindsay, I heard you have a new director in your office. Your desk is right next to it.
Right, yep, right there.
Not stressful?
Do what?
Not stressful.
He's super chill,
Good.
like the complete opposite of our previous one, complete opposite. And he's, I don't know if it's just because he's new, or if he just, the way he thinks is different, but he is very open to learning about our team and what we do. And so he's offering us some more resources and support than what we've had in the past. So I'm all about it. And he does sit right behind me. I'm not afraid to ask questions.
I heard you
So-
have more practicum students and that you can supervise.
Oh, hey, all right. I can do that. But I've also, somebody called me and I sent him to Hannah because she was not from EKU, I don't remember where, social work student, and I was telling her the different social workers at her agency. She wanted nothing to do with homelessness. So I sent her to Hannah to do Head Start.
My environment is, it's great. I mean, there's, how many, Jennifer? 8 of us? 10. Okay, so we have, 12 people that run a 24/7 shelter. So sometimes you're on a shift by yourself, or sometimes you're on a shift with one other employee for part of the shift, and maybe an intern for part of the shift, or a community volunteer for part of the shift. But then you're supervising and helping. I know families with, some with 5 children, some with 1 child, some with no children. So it's just a really fast-paced, most of the time, not always. Sometimes it's boring, and sometimes nobody's doing anything, and you're just up front trying to figure out what you can get into with the clients, but they live there, so you're in their home. You have to make yourself helpful to them and be, I guess, a resource and an advocate for their needs. So it's really invigorating, and I like it a lot.
My setting is very different. So when we're fully staffed, there are 8 of us right now. There's only 5 of us. So we are understaffed. So you might walk into our office and we're running around like chickens. But since we are macro, we work with legislators, professionals throughout the state. We fund parent education. So it's a little quieter. But if you get in there and get to know us as a student, like this, it's the legislative session right now. So press can be calling. It can be a little overwhelming, and so somebody might walk in and feel that tension and think, oh, what's going on? But at the same time, it's kind of fun because somebody can get a news alert on their phone, and all of a sudden you hear them screaming, oh, did you hear about this? And so we are, here I am with the word family again, but we're kind of like this little unit, this family that takes care of each other and helps support each other and ensures self-care. If you see somebody taking a big bag home, you're like, is that work? Do you need to be doing that? So it's very different. And since we serve the whole state, I have this horrible, horrible joke, and I think Molly's heard me tell it a bunch, so she's probably like, stop with it. People will say, well, where's your office? And I'll say, it's the Camry in the parking lot. Because I could be in Paducah on Monday, Pikeville on Wednesday, and Danville on Tuesday. So I could be all over the state. So it's, if you don't like to travel, I've learned to love podcasts, if anybody wants podcast recommendations. But it is very different. And you interact with law enforcement one day, judges one day, all the way to donors. So it's very different environment depending upon the day.
The Cabinet for Health and Family Services can be stressful. You're dealing with high stress situations of children being abused and neglected day in and day out. However, that support network within the Cabinet is key and great, and it can be a large support network, or more importantly, the smaller support network of your coworkers and your supervisor. In Fayette County alone, we probably have, 200 employees in a 3-story building. And, I don't know everyone's name, but I can sit down with my fellow cabinet employees and we can start chatting up. I mean, it's a community. We all support each other. That's why, even though I do more of the training aspects now, I'm still there to help with ongoing services or investigation, because I am there to support my fellow coworkers. And that's that's what we're trying to build up at the Cabinet at this point, is supporting each other and being a network, a community. So it is stressful, but it's good stress that you can strive on and learn from and find support from others.
My agency's a whole lot different. There's me and one other worker. And I like to say I literally am the jack of all trades there. I'm my IT department, I'm my human resources. So I think that's probably why I depend heavily on the network at large of social workers and other agencies, because I don't have people in the office with me a lot. I am very heavy reliant, but for my clients, like I do a lot of the and I'm the one-on-one person with the clients. I'm the person that writes our grants. Like it's everything from start to finish. So I think it's stressful. It's really stressful. I don't have anybody else that I can defer to a lot of times. And then of course with my other job, I'm on a college campus in a mental health setting. So there's 4 counselors there. We're a small school. And then we're in there with the nurses. So we're in the student health agency or part of the school. So it's completely different. There's a lot of confidentiality. It's all about, making sure that the student can get in and out without being seen and those types of things. So it's just a completely different dynamic.
So, Crystal, you started to head that direction, but the next question, number 15, is what are things you struggle with in the field or in your well, you're not in graduate school. So what are things you struggle with in the field?
Oh.
I mean, it's depending on the day what you struggle with. It's depending on the situations, depending on the client that you meet that day and the circumstances they bring to you. And I think that's true in most of our fields, or not fields, agencies. So being able to lean on other people that have that knowledge, whether it's people within your agency or people outside of your agency with a different agency, I think it's going to be key of learning from each other, so that way we can meet the needs of all of our clients.
So it sounds like struggle with perhaps lack of information or lack of maybe connections to coordinate. Sometimes it's struggle with having to wear multiple hats.
Yep.
Definitely.
And sometimes it's struggle related to burnout and not engaging in self-care. And then there's struggle when you're trying to transition and get used to a new boss, perhaps, new coworkers and different work styles.
Yeah, I'd say for as much as we love the work that we do, I think anybody would say that there are parts of their job that they dread. Like it's like, oh, it's grant season, or it's time to do this part of the work that I accept because I love to do this part of the work. So I think we have certain things that are just not our lane or our favorite thing to do, but I don't know. I guess it's a social worker personality to just kind of roll with
the punches. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, with the cabinet, you deal with a lot of politics, a lot of changing procedures in accordance to the governor that's in the office at that time, the commissioner that's in the office at that time, the legislation sessions that are going on. I mean, within the past 3 to 4 years, my entire practices have been flipped on side of their head, and I have had to learn a whole new way of doing things for the same end result, which is approving foster and adoptive parents. New trainings, new home studies, new everything. So even down to a new office building. So new phones. So you got to be able to learn as you go, and definitely take the initiative to do that, to overcome the struggle of new things.
I think having the knowledge base that we have sometimes is a struggle, because you see part of the issue is lack of resources, lack of funding, and you don't have a bunch of coworkers because you need the funding. We need more social workers. And so I think part of the struggle is the nature of it, is we need more of us. And I'm getting ready to hire for a job that's the third time we've posted this job and can't find a candidate. So we need more of us. And you feel it when you get out in the field.
One of the things that I
Definitely.
struggled with whenever I went to community action, not as much now, but whenever I first started a few years ago, was there was only a handful of social workers that actually worked there, and none of them were in my department. They were in other departments. And so if I was having any type of like work struggles, it was hard to necessarily talk to my supervisor or coworkers about it, just because they had different degree, different education, and so we weren't having the same conversation. And so I know I've called Robin and Jennifer multiple times. I'm like, I have a social work question, and there's nobody at my agency I can talk to about this. So we have more now, thankfully, so I could have those conversations with a few people. But that was a difficult thing, because there was a lot of people with like child and family study degrees and maybe criminal justice degrees or something related. But there's just some conversations you need to have with a social worker.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
At our agency, we're not top heavy with social workers. We have social workers, but we have other degrees as well. And I guess it's like we're all in one, we're just in one pot though. We're all there together. So it doesn't matter. You don't go tout I've got a bachelor's degree, so I know more than you do. You hope that you guide people that come in that don't have that knowledge base so that they pick up your practice. And we always use best practice. We try to, even new volunteers, new employees, say best practice is, instead of saying, oh no, don't do it that way.
Yeah.
Just guide them to best practice.
What do you mean?
As far as like if you have a new client and that client is a difficult client, well, what's best practice? How do you deal with that person's personality? You try to de-escalate, or you try to, change the direction of the conversation. A lot of times people that come to Hope Swings have mental health issues. They have former arrests. They might have medical issues. They might have aging issues. They have all these issues that you have to try to figure out how to navigate around. So there's a certain way that is best practice as far as how you deal with them. I mean, they respond better.
Okay, so how do you know it's best practice because they respond better?
Not particularly, but like if you're using navigational tools that you've learned in social work to guide that client into being agreeable to questions or agreeable to procedures that you do at the shelter, then I would always call that best practice, I guess.
And also you
And
base
you
it
work
off
there
of
too.
research and peer-reviewed journals, and there's always going to be some sort of research and things that are proven best for whatever the work is that you're doing. And so rather than basing it off of like your opinion or how your agency has always done it, it's good to look at those things.
Yeah,
Just so you can,
preconceived ideas about what they should respond to and how they should act, but they're not. So how do you navigate around that?
We struggle with that a lot because I think a lot of people shy away from research and evaluation. So if we fund a program, it has to be evidence-based. And to be evidence-based, you can't just have a sampling size of 12 in a study. So you have all these criteria to meet. And we might be working with a group and they're like, but our program works. It's really good. We promise. 12 out of 10 people are happy. And you're like, it's too extra, So we struggle with that. We struggle with being on the same language with folks, especially as it relates, because a lot of funders nowadays, especially larger funders, are looking at your outcomes of your program. So other words of advice is boring as research and evaluation is. Try to get some of it. Because that's one of the reasons I'm struggling and filling a position is somebody that has that knowledge of evaluation and research and can go in and look at research studies and help guide, oh, well, that is a good research study versus no, that's not. So I think don't shy away from it. It's really cool. I promise.
Whether you work in a nonprofit field that research to fund your
Yeah.
program or the government where you get funding from government, I mean, you're still using research. I mean, every aspect of my job is evidence-based research programs that I'm working with. So research, definitely, I second her. Be involved, be passionate about it. I wasn't, so.
Understand it.
Understand it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ask questions. Yeah.
Thank you. So do we have any questions from the virtual audience?
We actually have 2 questions.
Woohoo!
Okay, good job, guys.
There's people on the other end of that.
The first question comes from a group of students from
Asbury.
Asbury.
Yeah.
So first, they join a little late, so they're just wondering if you go through really quick and just say your name and your agency. So if you want to just start that real quick.
Yes, I am Crystal McPherson, and I'm with Family Services Association of Boyle County.
Andy Holt with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Recruitment and Certification of Foster and Adoptive Parents.
Jana Eastep Jordan, Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky.
Terry Smallwood, I work for Hope Swings Domestic Violence Shelter and Program, and I'm an advocate.
Lindsay Anderson, I'm with Community Action Council in Lexington, and my job, I work with homeless individuals and families.
Perfect. Okay, so then their second question was, if you could share some of your most valuable CEUs or other training opportunities that you find valuable or recommend.
Well, I don't know about topics necessarily, but I know UK and other colleges, they'll have like a CEU boot camp, and you can get them all done in like a day or 2. That's really helpful.
It's what I do for my job, is over the prevention education arm, and so mine's a little biased because it's all child abuse prevention related, but I would say that if anybody is not well versed in adverse childhood experiences or the ACEs study,
Yes.
and not just the study itself, but some of the practices moving forward and combating those childhood traumas, I would suggest, because it affects everybody. It affects, if you work with the elderly, if you work with middle-aged to kiddos, I would suggest getting educated on that.
I second that, for sure.
Yeah.
I went to something a couple years ago, working with veterans, and that was very helpful, with some of the perceptions and sensitive areas, things like that. And they also went and worked with students who are veterans, but it was very well done.
Do you know who the presenter was?
It was a full day, it was at UK, it was 2 women from Texas. So,
Did Asbury folks hear that from the audience? If you could click yes or no on that.
I was gonna say, definitely, attend something that has to do with opiates and,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
substance abuse and, you know, all those different things in Kentucky, especially in the southeastern part of Kentucky, such a high, percentage of, you know, drugs, especially with opiates.
And I definitely, I agree with that. And I attended another CEU related to more of the marijuana route of things and how vaping's becoming more intensified and the legalization of marijuana and how all of that's affecting Kentucky population and what's the next steps. That was a really good one. It was through University of Kentucky.
Asbury folks, are you happy? We're going to hope that
We
you.
need to remember to restate the question.
Okay, restate the question. So we had 3 suggestions on recommended CEU opportunities. And the one suggestion was related to veterans, and the other 2 were related to substance abuse. And I heard Kentucky, University of Kentucky offering one related to opioids. I don't know the others, where the other locations are, but just in terms of topical areas, ACEs.
ACEs, yes.
ACEs.
Yeah.
Adverse childhood effects, ACEs.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, virtual audience. We sure appreciate you.
There's one more question.
Okay, one more question.
So this one comes from a student. She was wondering if anybody had received their BSW online. She's afraid that if she takes her BSW online, she won't get the same kind of benefits as in class. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, we discussed a few minutes ago about camaraderie within your program. And I think if you're online, you definitely need to seek that out because that community of support is important.
Especially if you have not, if you're like not non-traditional and you haven't been working in the field or around social services. Yeah, I would definitely say you need to focus on trying to get into a program where you can be around.
Or reach out to your fellow students that are also online and set up study sessions if you live in a close proximity. You know, that might be a good route to go as well.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience here? All right, so question 16. Should you work while in graduate school or only focus on school?
I did both. I worked in graduate school, and it was the hardest time of my life, but the most beneficial situation. Because like I said earlier, I was able to apply what I was learning in my graduate school to my practice and vice versa. It was a really good encompassing learning experience for me. It is stressful. You are taking at least 6 hours, which is part-time, working a full-time position plus overtime because my job has a lot of overtime. It's like 45 plus hours a week. And then on top of that, a practicum, which is about 30 hours a week. So I definitely had stress, and it was still beneficial. I rose to that stress, and I used it to drive me. And plus, I ate a lot of fast food and gained a bunch of weight. That happens.
I don't know if you have the choice. I don't really know if like which one you should do, but I know a lot of students that I went to school with, you didn't really have a choice. You had to work full time and go to school. So it definitely teaches you how to manage your time and how to prioritize.
And plus, getting that experience while you get your education, and once you graduate, you have both. And then you can move forward within your agency, move up, or find another agency that meets what you're passionate about.
Okay, number 17. How did you find scholarships or grants to go to graduate school? Perhaps you didn't. If you did,
Student loans all the way. Still paying those off. If you work for the Cabinet for Health and Family Services and continue getting your master's program, they have what's called a stipend program. The stipend program is where they will pay for the tuition and also pay your salary while attending your practicum situations within the Cabinet. And all you have to do is commit for 2 years after that, sort of like the PCWCP program, but they pay for your time to attend classes and to work in your practicum at the Cabinet.
I was an AmeriCorps member for a year after my undergrad, and if you're an AmeriCorps member, if you finish all your hours and everything that you're supposed to do, you get an education award, and you can do that up to 2 years. And then your education award, it's usually always the same amount as whatever the Pell Grant is that year. So total, if you did it for the 2 years, $10,000 to $11,000 total, and you can either put that towards future education or you can use it to pay off your current student loans. So I only did that for a year, but then it was over $5,000 that I could use towards grad school, and the rest of it is student loans.
I've had students that have found a lot just by Googling. So things that you wouldn't even think of, not to get political, but Democrat, Republican parties have scholarship opportunities. They even would Google. I had one student who had a parent with substance abuse issues and found a scholarship. So, and all she did, she probably spent maybe 10 hours Googling, but applied for tons and tons and found a few, and it was beneficial, and all she did was Google.
Definitely do your research, like she was saying. I did not do my research, and I was not aware, since I was a foster youth, that my tuition for my undergrad would have been paid for if I applied for it. I didn't find out until my last semester in my social work classes that that program was there, and they will not go back and forgive any of that. So, nope.
I'm sure you tell everybody that you know about that now.
Yes, every class I teach for foster parents, apply for this,
Topic.
do this, keep this in the forefront of your mind when they graduate high school. It will save you a lot of money.
There's some employers, and if you go to their employment page, like bigger employers, UPS, Amazon, and they will outline their assistance, how long you have to work there. So I know a few students who have actually done that to help offset. They might have had to pay for 1 year, but that second year, it more than made up for the first year where they had to do student loans.
Okay, question 18. What have you found to be the major differences between college and practice?
I would say that your practice, probably no matter what part of social work you do, is a lot more political than I think I ever thought of. I mean, I'm not a very political person, but I definitely wasn't a political person whenever I was in college. And you learn, even if it doesn't necessarily affect your job and how you do it, like you said, or one of you said earlier, politics definitely affects the funding. The funding affects how your agency can operate and how many people you can hire. So yeah, that part I wasn't expecting.
Definitely stay in tune and up to date with that arena, the politician arena, or whatever you want to call it. I never thought I would be one of the people that listen to NPR when I'm traveling to Danville or Clark County, because I travel a lot for my job too. But it's good to just be aware of the political arena, because that does have an impact on your positions as social workers.
And how you vote.
Yeah.
And educate others.
Exactly.
So you focus primarily on this. I would appreciate if you talk a little bit more about the differences between college and practice. I'm sure there's more.
Sure, there's definitely more. I mean, the way that I write my reports versus a college essay is completely different, completely different. And learning that as soon as you graduate from college is an aspect that you're going to have to figure out. And we all learn systems theory. We all learn micro, meso, macro, but I don't sit there and think I'm using systems theory today to work with this client. No, it's just automatic, and that's what they taught us to do. It's ingrained in us. So that's a major difference, not thinking of the theoretical background to it.
I always tell my students, I think they train our brains is what they do. They train our brains to think a certain way. And then again, another thing is the notes. The notes are almost different everywhere you go. So like there's going to be different requirements. You're going to want to say as much as you can, but there's going to be, based on the agency itself, there's going to be rules for that. That's what I see.
I'm sure every one of us takes reports and notes completely different from each other. So that's a major thing that you have to think about when working with agencies.
Like the SOAP notes stuff that you guys are talking about now, like, they kind of translate different from agency to agency.
I do. Has anybody heard of Foster Care Review Board?
No.
So I serve on the Madison B Foster Care Review Board. So I review paper cases of kids who live in out-of-home care. And what I'm reviewing are the notes that the caseworker has written, that private child care entity, the therapist has written. I'm reviewing all of that. And it's so critical in what we recommend to judges based on those notes. And so some of them might be cookie cutter. It might be the same notes from month after month. Or you might have someone who has taken the time to let you know just little bitty things that make the biggest difference in the lives of these kids. So I think when I think from school to practice has implications. It's, you're in it. And so everything you do has that ripple effect. So I wouldn't kind of get just with the ball rolling, or what's that phrase where you're just in something. I would take every day in a rut. I would take every day seriously, because all of it does have a ripple effect and an impact. So I think when you're out there practicing, it's very different from in school when you write your grant and it's for a class versus you're writing a grant to keep a program going that helps parents get their kids back. And it's, it's the real world. So with that comes a lot of stress and a lot of responsibility, and having to have that ability to juggle that and maintain your self-care with that.
And what you report in your documentation is permanent. Remember that. You can't go back and erase that. And it's reviewed over and over again by the Foster Care Review Board, by the judge, by my supervisor. It is permanent. So make sure that you're accurate and honest.
In college, I was very grade focused. That was probably a detriment to me because I was worried about the grades a lot. And I did well, but after I got out, the grades weren't the most important thing. It's the knowledge you took with what the grade meant when you were in. So
You're dealing with actual people in their
yeah,
lives.
so with the people in the application, it was more fulfilling, and even more so than those A's that you got from college. So
We had a question here.
Yay, question.
I was just gonna ask about that, like the code of ethics. As I've experienced in my practice, and it's not as, like very black and white. Like there's no addendum under each code of ethics. Like, but if this happens, this, and this. Have you experienced in your practice that it's a lot more difficult to understand what is actually best for your client versus, the code of ethics says this, maybe in ethical dilemmas or your personal values or what have you?
So the question was for the audience in the virtual world. We have a question from one of our members asking about the application of the code of ethics and how nice and neat that is in practice.
It's not
At all.
at all. I mean, you personally taking that code of ethics, applying to what you do and try to follow through with that is the key aspect that you need to keep in mind. Because I work for an agency that is not social work based, because we have criminal justice majors, sociology majors in the same roles as I do. So we're not all going by the same code of ethics that we learned in college. So.
I think if you are ever in a supervisory role as well, it's difficult because you have to separate yourself from being a social worker to being a boss.
Yeah.
And you have to do what's in the best interest of that agency. And sometimes it's not being that person's social worker, it's being their boss. So with the way our brains have been trained, I had struggled with that. Fortunately, I had an awesome mentor and boss who helped me through that. But if I didn't have her to help me along that way, I could see how me trying to social work a situation would not have been good in the long run for the person I supervised or the agency that I worked for.
And definitely do your research and education because it's so different, like she said, being a manager and a social worker. Do your research, do the education component.
Yeah.
For my master's program, they offered a class, nonprofit management. I took that, and that helped me sort of prep for semi-supervisional role that I do. I'm not a full supervisor, so.
Dr. Bob has a
On
question.
the other side of that, do you feel that with your social work skills, it helps you navigate through some of the political things you said and even helped you in management with some of the people skill aspects of your social work background?
So repeating the question from the audience was if you had any gained expertise as a social worker, if that's been helpful for you in navigating some of these challenges with coworkers and some of the issues.
Without a doubt, because I believe in order to be a successful leader, you have to encourage people's strengths. And that has social work all over it.
Yes, exactly.
And so, yeah, I agree, definitely.
And being mediators, being able to mediate
Yes.
conversations between, again, like your systems, the people that you serve and the people who are funding who you serve, being able to mediate conversations. Yeah, definitely facilitating.
Any questions from our virtual audience? Any other questions from our audience here?
I'd like to know, be reminded what year they all graduated. And we're not talking dates or anything, I just want to know what year.
Graduation year.
2006.
What?
2006.
2011?
2006.
2013.
2013.
And this is from your undergrad or grad?
Undergrad.
From here.
So the last question, we have 20 questions for you. Here's our 20th question. Are you doing the type of job you'd wanted?
Yes.
Well, like when I first started in college, I started off as an education major. I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. But then I realized I didn't want to deal with the politics of the school system, so I went the social work route, and boy, that was stupid. But when I went into the social work route, I thought, all right, maybe more the medical side, maybe more the hospital side that I would want to do. But then I got to Pam Black, and she put me into the foster care role. And I learned that first semester, that's my passion. That's what I really wanted to do. And that's what I've enjoyed since starting this job and graduating EKU. Thank you, Pam. No, I know. Yep.
I saw that had too, what job you had wanted, and I had a similar experience where I was thinking LCSW, that's me. I did internship with a behavioral health agency and had an instance where we had a foster parent that said, I'm done with the kid. So I remember driving to that house and I thought, I'm going to see a teenage boy sitting on the porch, and it was an 8-year-old boy. And I remember thinking, oh no, this cannot happen. So Pam said, have you ever heard of Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky? I was like, no, but what do they do? So I did my internship there and I've never left. So she was right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I started out, the time that I graduated, I wanted to work with victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, and so I did work there. And then towards the end of my time there, I was working more on the housing side of it, so getting them out of the shelter into their own housing. And then, as grants do, that one ended, and it wasn't renewed at that time, and so I had to leave. But then there was a job that opened up in homelessness and housing, and so I had experience with that. And so the job that I wanted to do shifted, but I started off doing what I wanted to do, and then that just changed later.
I think many times in the BSW level that you may get passionate about a practicum you've been in. So I started, my first one was hospice care. So I thought, I'm going to be a hospice care worker. And then my next practicum was mental health for persistent mentally ill adults. And then I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And then the next opportunity was Hope Swings. So, and that's where I am. So I guess it kind of chooses you sometimes. And that's where I ended up. It chose me.
Aww, that's sweet.
Crystal, do you want to add any?
I have Pam to thank for mine as well. My 490 class was with Family Resource and Youth Services Center in Danville, which is pretty unique in the way that they handle things. Like
Anna.
now, at that time it was Cliff Dunn. He was an LCSW, and he was really big in the community about, pulling all the social service agencies together to help. So he had a huge frisky, like it was so much bigger than the community should be holding, right? So he really influenced how I did when I went to my agency. And he actually, it was like he was playing a chess game, he would get all these interns and set them up at these agencies so that we could all be working together. So a lot of us are a result of that. And I think that's where my style came from, of just feeling like, if it's not being done, I'll do it. If it's not being done, I'll figure out how to get it done. So that's, yeah, definitely. And she was really instrumental in convincing me that that's because I wanted to be a mental health professional. My first practicum was Florence Crittenden Home in Lexington, and I so wanted to do that. And then it was like, well, just try it out. It might be a nice fit for you. That's history.
So if you take anything away from this, it's you just need to listen.
Just listen to
Pam.
Pam.
Just listen to Pam because she's always right.
What would Pam Black do? All right, good. Good. Good,
Yes,
good.
I failed to shout out to Pam. She placed me in my practicum and it was a good fit, but after
She just
that,
knows.
she
Yes.
knows.
Yeah.
She knows what you can do.
So for the non-EKU people that are watching,
You need
it
to
sounds
come
like
to
you're
EKU.
gleaning, the silver lining is you pay attention to the field instructor.
Yes.
And you give it a try.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not what you
Yes.
thought it is, and it tends to be something that maybe it chose you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've said
Yeah.
something that's caused them to think that this place is a good place for them.
Yeah.
But we know as faculty, we know our students.
Yes.
Because we've had you all, some of you had to, I had you 335, I may have had you in 210, 335,
Yeah.
390, 350, all the way to 490, some of you, sorry.
Yes.
But we really know you all.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to place you, or see where you, I can see where you would be, long, 10 years down the road, when you're sitting in my office. And I see you 10 years down the road. So that's just how it sometimes works.
So for the virtual audience people, it has advocacy for faculty going on in
There
here.
you go.
Trust us, you know,
True, yeah.
what's right sometimes. Any questions from the virtual audience to finish us up today?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit to the nature of, I tend to be a very, I need to have organization in my life and be very structured. And the majority of the professional social workers that I've talked to before are talking about the unpredictableness of your daily job and how you still think clearly and be able to help your clients in a situation where you kind of have to be on the fly.
So the question related to being tolerant of, I guess, inconsistency in
Yeah.
schedules and just being able to be on the fly, the flexibility that's required. How have you been able to manage that and cope with that?
I'm very much the same way, and if I'm just gonna take a guess, you probably really like forms and like doing all that. So whatever you do, wherever agency you are, you have to write it down, you have to fill something out, you have to track it some way. So at the end of the day, whenever I was unloading all of that, a lot of times that was like the happiest part of my day, because I could get it out of my brain onto paper or into the computer or whatever the system was. And so you could kind of organize that chaos.
I would have to agree with that. I'm very much organized. People make fun of how organized my office is, but it really clears my head. I get it down on paper, I get it in the computer system, it's out of my head, it's documented. If I need to revisit that thought, I can go back and do that, so.
But definitely during the day, definitely don't freak out when things are chaos, because you'll be able to organize it later. But just in the moment, just kind of do whatever you got to do. But it'll be okay later.
That's why I'm at my desk at 3 a.m. because I'm putting things down on.
And then the people you interface with, the other professionals, might not be as organized, so don't let
You
it
can
get
help
under
them.
your skin.
Yeah.
Learn to just see the good in it. Pick out the
It
good.
goes back to
and-
what she said earlier, the strengths of other people. We're
Yeah.
not just seeing the strengths in our clients, we're seeing the strengths in each other, and working within those strengths is a key aspect.
I was gonna say, you're probably gonna be that person that's creating the forms to get things more organized in the office. Like, maybe if we just had a form for this, or this is the sequence that things need to go in. You'll be that person in the office.
Yeah.
And I just have one more, just really quickly. I just wondered, have you guys ever supervised students? I know you kind of talked about that a little bit. I always worry, as a student intern, I worry about getting in the way. And kind of wondering about how you perceive students when they come in. Do you want their help, or is it kind of like, we'll do it because we have to? And I know that varies by person and by supervisor, but I always worry about being in my supervisor's way, stepping on toes and things like that.
So the question was, I'm sorry, it was very eloquently said, I'm going to just abbreviate it, it was a beautiful question. So the question had to do with how comfortable are field instructors in mentoring field students? I guess that sum it up.
The first one was definitely a transition, because you have to think like a supervisor and not just a student. But you are so helpful. I don't have a student this semester, but every other semester that I've had a student, I mean, it's been wonderful. Little things that need to get done that are super important that we may just not have time to do, like we can have you do that, and not just like organizing things or like filing stuff away. That's important, but like researching a topic or like
Right.
looking at the latest theory about whatever. I mean, sometimes we just don't have time to do that.
Right.
And you do have time to do that. And the information that you help gather helps us in the long run.
Yes.
I love students because I think of them as potential future
Yes,
employees.
Mhm.
And if I have the opportunity to get any kind of child abuse prevention information in somebody's brain that's going to go out into the field and use that to better lives, I think students are huge assets to
Yeah.
placements.
I definitely have to agree. I have a student this semester, and she has helped so much with not just making copies or anything like that. She has done the research on diligent recruitment of more African American foster homes or more homes that will take medically fragile youth or teenagers, and putting together this wonderful presentation for what's called the Network Program. It's fellow foster parents out there recruiting other foster parents. So that way I can teach them the information that she was able to present to me. I mean, that is so, I don't know how many hours that saved me. So I'm very appreciative of my students. And hopefully I'll get an EKU student someday. Okay? Trust in Pam Black.
So any final questions from our virtual audience?
No, just a big thank you from the students of Ashbury and one of your other students. That's all.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us, virtual folks, and you all here. Thank you again. And to our panelists, let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you. If you guys want more information about the cabinet or becoming a respite provider or foster parent or whatever, there's a table right out here to the left of the registration table. I got to plug my cabinet. We definitely need you folks. Yes, the good ones. You're all good.
Yes, they are.
Come on.
I
They're from
absolutely.
EKU.
Miss Anna is the
She is
Yeah, she did her 390 and her 490. And then Sarah did her work there.
Thank you.
This is fun.
Yeah, it was parent education folks that come out of her class.
Yeah. Taking our pictures.
And I forgot about Cliff.
Come on over. Come on over. Good to see you. Good. How about yourself? Very good. Good. Busy. Yeah. Good. Good. Thanks for having me. We appreciate it.
Good.
Yeah, we appreciate the invite.
I was happy whenever I went to lunch with her last